Okay, welcome to the November 2017 Mississippi PowerShell User Group meeting. Tonight, our topic is chat automation today, work smarter tomorrow, and we've got fellow PowerShell MVP, Yap Brazier. I'll turn it over to you, and correct me if I mispronounced your name.
Oh, no, not at all. You pronounced it well enough. So, I was invited by Mike to speak here today about chat automation. So, let's get started about who I am. If there's at any point an interruption in the quality or I drop away, just send me a message or let me know, then I can repeat what I skipped over. So I'm Jaap Brasser. I'm a PowerShell MVP, nowadays a CDM MVP, which sounds very fancy, but I'm still very much involved in PowerShell. I speak at the European PowerShell conference and also the Asian conference. I also helped organize the Asian conference, and basically I am involved anything PowerShell related. So the PowerShell user groups, blogging. I have a couple of small scripts and modules up in the PowerShell gallery. So what are we talking about today? Well, today it's about chat automation, or I'll also be calling it ChatOps. I'll go into what kind of tools we're using and why we're using them. I'll talk about deploying a PowerShell bot and working with it. I'll talk a bit about security, and there will of course be demos. Mike, what is the format going to be? Will there be questions during the presentation, or will other questions be at the end?
What we normally do is, if somebody's got a question, and even tonight, it's not a super large group. So if somebody has a question, just wait for the presenter to kind of break in what he's saying, and feel free to unmute, or if you don't have a mic, just type it in the chat, and either the presenter will see it or I can ask the question for you.
Yeah, I don't think I can see it while I'm presenting. So okay. If there's anything in the chat, just interrupt me. I have no problem with that. I always like to keep it interactive, although it's a little bit harder with remote sessions. So let's go into chat automation. So what is chat automation? Chat automation is just any kind of automation you kick off from a chat. It's not so much a new concept. I've been around on the internet for more than 20 years, and even in its earliest incarnations, there were already bots on IRC, and they could do some minor tasks. But ever since Slack and a number of other messaging tools got bigger, chat automation has been picking up quite a bit. So, what is the advantage of using chat automation or ChatOps? For me, the biggest advantage is that you can get non-technical users or junior engineers involved with scripting and getting them to use your scripts where otherwise they would not be able to. So, for example, when you've written a PowerShell script or any kind of script, getting a non-technical user to start using it is a bit of a hurdle. One of the solutions is, of course, to build a GUI tool, use a tool like Sapien, or just do it yourself using WinForms, and getting your users interaction in that way. but it's a bit cumbersome because you end up spending a lot of time building a GUI for your script, and that time could obviously better be spent either writing more scripts or automating cooler stuff. So there's a benefit in chat here. If you make your scripts available via chatbot or some other interface, people can immediately start using it. And if you already have a chat system set up, today I'll mostly be speaking about Slack because that's what we are using in our company, and it's quite widely used. I don't know if your user group has a Slack channel, but I know the PowerShell Slack is quite active. Second of all, once you have it, once you have a script or a function deployed in chat, the moment you start using the function in a general channel, other people can see exactly what you're doing. It automatically logged what you're doing because the chat log also functions as a log. So if you use an automated solution in chat to remediate a problem or investigate a problem, a junior admin or a junior non-technical person can see that, and if you've granted the correct permissions, they will be able to take those same steps the next time. And that simplifies the process of getting your scripts used by multiple users. So I already mentioned that today we'll be talking about Slack. So the reason I talk about Slack is because we're using it in our company, so it's my frame of reference. And Microsoft Teams is a bit challenging because it requires an Office 365 subscription. Also, PoshBot is currently only available for Slack. There's currently no integration for Microsoft Teams yet. Obviously, I'll be using PowerShell because PowerShell is my hammer and I like it very much. And you guys are a PowerShell user group, so I'm sure you can appreciate that. And I'll be using the bottom, also be using PS Slack as that's a required module for PoshBot. All right. If there's no questions so far, I'll start with the first demo. And in this demo, I'll be showing how you can deploy your own bot, start to finish, from installing the modules to registering your token and configuring the bot. So I don't hear anything, so I assume I can go ahead. Let's see, demo 1. Let's go it. So I just checked if it was actually working. So first thing first, we're going to use, how's the size? Should I make the font bigger, Mike?
Okay, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that's great right there.
Okay. That's a little bit too big for me. Okay, the first thing we'll be doing is installing the module, which is available in the PowerShell gallery. So it's quite easy to install this. And what you'll see if you're installing this, we can see it's installing PoshBot and also PS Slack, as PoshBot depends on PS Slack. All right. So that's successfully installed. Let's import the module and see what kind of commands we have available. So you can see that in PowerShell we have a couple of commands available. And if you take a look at PS Slack, oh, this was definitely not my intention. And now it never happened. So what happened there is that I accidentally right-clicked my selected text. And we see we have a couple of commands here available to interact with Slack. So I'll switch over to Slack. Let's see the correct one, Mississippi, yes. So in Slack, you can add and invite team members to a chat group. So I've created a group with myself and the bot. As you can see, the bot is currently offline. Zoom it. Because it's a little bit small. And here we see the bot is currently offline. So let's create a configuration. And what I'll be setting up is the name of the bot. I'll set myself as an admin. I'll set a command prefix, so if I do an exclamation mark, the bot should pay attention, or when I say bot. Here's my super secret Slack token that I'll have to reset afterwards. And I'll store that in a hash table. So I have my parameters now. I'll use the command to create a config. So now we have a config file. And I'll save that configuration to disk. So I'll tell it to store it in the postbot folder. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Here we go. It's basically just a hash table that contains all the configuration options we just set up and a couple of default options like the command history, log size. Do note that what was I trying to say? That I set the log level for this to informational. And when I start postbot, I will enable verbose logging. So we can see a bit of feedback in this console. So the moment I start this, I don't start it as a job, so we will be able to see in the console what's happening. So let's go back to Slack. And I'll zoom in a bit here as well. So we can see now the bot is online and in the chat. And let's take a look at what kind of commands we have available. So if we type help, it will retrieve all the available commands we have. You can get some basic information. Notice that I use bot now instead of the exclamation mark. You can see there's a bunch of commands and it has been running for 48 seconds. It can do some standard stuff. It's always a bit risky because it will get a random picture, but so far when I've done it, it ended up good. There we go, a washing cat. And we can also use the bot directly to find new plugins. So we can see which plugins are tagged with Pushbot. And if you take a look, there's a couple of plugins available. And plugins in Pushbot are just PowerShell modules that are tagged as Pushbot. So I did already install this module because I wanted to test everything before I started with the presentation. Let's take a look what kind of commands we have available. So we can see we can retrieve a xkcd comic. And I'll run it with test as random. So this is not directly very interesting. Getting random pictures is not exactly chat automation, but this is to show that with a minimal setup and a very short setup time, you can already get a PowerShell bot up and running and in your Slack channel within a very short time period.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So in typical practice, do you typically have a bot that's doing a particular function, or like just bots running around that are these monolithic kind of things? It's doing a bunch of stuff, or a bot that does this, a bot that does that. How do people normally use these?
It differs. Usually, how we have implemented it in our Slack team is that we put a bot per channel, and it does happen that we have multiple bots in a single channel, but that's usually the case when different people are managing the bots. I would not, from my experience with Pushbot, I would not use Pushbot as the only bot, as the threading is sometimes problematic. So if it gets a lot of commands in a lot of different channels, then either you have to wait for a long time before it responds, or it might not see the command. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess. So actually, that brings on the next question. Is that so? The Pushbot is just joins the Slack channel, but it can join multiple channels and be listening in multiple places for commands.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so it can be almost functional at that point. It can be in a bunch of channels at that point.
Yeah, it can be. So currently, if I go into the general channel, I think it should also be in there. No, it's actually not in the general channel. It is also in the demo channel. You can just treat the bot as a generic user. You can invite him wherever you want him. You can DM him. You can get him into group conversations. Yeah. So one step I skipped over. I did mention that I had a token. I did not show yet how to set up the token. So if you click your Slack team, in case you haven't done this before, you can go to Manage Apps, and it will open up a website. And if we go to Custom Integrations, we have the bots. And all I did in the preparation for this one was that I created this configuration and generated this API token. So if I were to click the regenerate button right now, then I would get a new key and my bot would stop working. So that's something I should do after the session, otherwise everyone who will see this recording will be able to hijack my Slack channel. So be careful when sharing configuration files, or if you're putting your configuration files on Git, that your API token is not exposed there. All right. Last thing I wanted to show was a couple of configuration files. So you can see that in plugins.psd1, Postbot uses the PSD format for its configuration files. You can see that the modules we have in there are configured here. So we have the Wolfram one, we have networking, we have XKCD here. The groups are used to set security permissions. Currently, there's only one group, and it's a bot administrators group, as this is just a demo Slack team. And you can see the permissions that have been defined. So these permissions can be assigned to groups, and the users can then be assigned to the groups. Here we go. So I've showed how to create a Slack API token. I installed Postbot. I set it up using a minimal configuration, and I showed some basic functionality of installing what's called plugins in Postbot, which are just PowerShell modules that it downloads from the PowerShell gallery. And I've showed how to install those. So, any other questions about this first demo? All right.
Good.
So, what is next, or what would you use this for? Well, I always like to get back to a simple example of something interesting I shared. This was actually I think one of my first widely used Slack functions I put in there. So me and my team, we were already using Slack for our internal communications, and I think this was last winter. We ran into a problem in our office. Our coffee machine had broken down, so we were very much dependent on external measures for getting coffee. And we have a couple of options available around our office, but it turned out that the best coffee came from a coffee truck that was not always at the same place. So what I did was I wrote a short PowerShell script. I think it was 7 lines or 8 lines. It would go to the Facebook page of the coffee truck. It did a very dirty regex to get the location and the time of its last update, and based on that, I could know that the coffee truck was actually standing next to our office. So after I wrote that script, I added it to Slackbot. I threw it in a channel, and the moment someone would say coffee in any kind of context, the bot would automatically respond and tell us if the coffee truck was actually there. So even though this is not, it doesn't seem like a very useful application. What we achieved here was that I was in a team of 12 people. I wrote a small PowerShell function that took me about 10 minutes to write. It took me another 5 minutes to tag it as a module for my bot. And within 15 minutes, I was able to share my my webscaping function, and my colleagues and I, we would know when the coffee would be there. So what I'm trying to show, what I'm trying to explain here is that normally if you would write a function like this, you could tell people that it exists, but how would you distribute it? You could send it through email. It would probably get blocked if you send it as a PS1 file. If you send it as TXT, then someone has to download the attachment and then manually execute it every time he wants to know. And now we had it neatly integrated in our chat channel. And after I showed it once or twice that we could use this to establish if the coffee truck was there, the rest of the team immediately joined in. So what is our next step? So getting funny pictures of cats and knowing where to get coffee is all nice, but it's more fun in games. The next step is to apply this for automating our daily jobs. So once we start doing that, we have to take security into account. So what this means is, I already mentioned that the Slack token, we should make sure that we don't share that when we have the configuration files. Don't put it on the public repo. But also the configuration files. Right now I store it in my user folder, so I know it's only available for me and other admins. But also the module files that are used by PostBot, they need to be properly secured as well. Because if a user that doesn't have access to the functions on Slack, if he's able to manipulate any of the files of the bot, he can still escalate his privilege that way. So it's important to realize that if you're going to use this for infrastructural purposes or unlocking user accounts, for example, make sure that you lock down your chatbot the same way you would lock down a regular server. So to continue with that, I'm going to show one of the possible interactions, and this is something we also use in our company, and that is we have some problematic servers, and we wrote a couple of functions in order to establish if a server is running, if it's doing what it should be doing, and remediate it if possible. So let's see. So for this purpose, I am running a VM. Here we go. Can you also see my screen when I'm in the VM? Is this visible?
Yep.
Okay, good. So the premise here is that this server is running a web service. Get servers, or at least it should be running the World Wide Web publishing service, and it's currently not running. So my manager gets a call in the middle of the night, and the customer is very upset because their website is down. So normally what would happen is that I get woken up and I have to resolve this issue. So let's see if we can do this in a better way. Here we go. So my manager I've obviously already instructed him how to use Slack, because otherwise this exercise is pointless. So he knows that he can ask the bot stuff. So we'll have the manager ask the bot something about web server. So you can see there's a couple of functions available. Status, start the web server, and escalate. So we start out with, let's see what the status is. All right. Well, my manager has all the information he needs. The web server is down. So let's escalate the issue. So escalate issue server. All right, that's not the correct name of the server. So let's ask what's happening with the web server. So Jaap is the responsible engineer. We're waking him up and make sure he starts doing the job. So I'm myself now. So I wake up, and instead of RDPing or having to start up my laptop, I just use my phone to establish what's happening here. All right, the status of this web server, it's down. Well, I'm a technical person, so I want a bit more information to So here we see the bot can collect more information. It's actually connecting to the VM now and retrieving this information from the VM. So I can see, okay, the service is stopped. We had some issues in the past with free space on this server, but that's not a problem right now. And we can see that the server is actually up. So we know the problem is the fact that the service has been stopped. So, and let's see if we can start this. Well, this looks good. So this icon is a pushbot indicating that it successfully completed a command. And let's see if I can be quick enough and show what it shows. Here we go. So when pushbot is working on your command or is executing a command, what it does in the background, it will start a PowerShell job, and it will execute the command in the PowerShell job. So the moment that job finishes, pushbot will communicate back whatever output is generated from the command. You can see it started it again. Now if I query for the details, I should be getting them again. And we can see the service is running now. So if I switch back to the machine I have here, here we go. We should be able to see the same result. And we can see the service is up and running again. So the advantage here is obviously, okay, if I anticipated that this was happening, this might be happening, I can now resolve a problem without having to start a computer, and I'm just able to manage this directly from my phone. So I don't have to get out of bed anymore, and I can troubleshoot common issues with functions that I've defined and made available through the chat. And it's not just me, because the next morning when my colleagues come in and I might not be in the office yet, and my manager wants to know what happened, and they can ask my colleagues. My colleagues can take a look in the chat, see exactly what I typed, exactly what I executed, and next time I won't even be called out of bed anymore.
So is there a component or something that runs on, say, a server or a machine in your environment that the bot communicates with to start this service?
No, this is just PostBot itself that is executing these commands. So what I can show is for example, let's see, my Hyper-V manager. So if I would pass the VM, no, that's fine. I don't need to reconnect. If I would execute the same command again, we'll see that PostBot will get a little bit upset because it's not able to read the details anymore. Here we go. It just gives us back the error message. So since I'm running everything locally here, that's also the reason why I'm running PowerShell as administrator. So whatever permissions your PostBot is running with, that is the permissions it will be executing the commands with.
Is the PostBot running on a server in your place and constantly monitoring the channel?
Yeah, so the moment you start PostBot, it's monitoring all the channels and all the private messages that get sent to it. So if I would click its name, send it a message like help, we can, oh, I misclicked there. You can see that it also responds if I send it a direct message. If I would go into the demo channel instead of the Mississippi channel, and I would ask it for the same, what was the command again? I'm better at copy pasting. So if we would go here, it would pick up the command here. So it's monitoring all the channels that it's a part of. So did I also answer your question, Mike?
I think so, and I think what I need to do is go play with this more, because what I'm kind of interested in is, like, if I'm at dinner with my family and I've got my phone and I've got Slack on it, can I check on the status of a server, and can I start the service from Slack on my phone, or do I have to run it on a computer that has PowerShell installed?
No, you can do this entirely to Slack on your phone. You wouldn't need a computer with PowerShell installed. It would depend what kind of functions you have defined, but you could create a function that simply states execute this PowerShell command and give me back the output, and that would allow you to do pretty much anything. But if you write a function like that, I would make sure that you are the only one that can use it, or only have trusted people be able to use that function.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of just talk through something and see and ask if it's what it is. So basically, you have a PowerShell processor and the bot itself running. So it's a script and it's a PowerShell session running on some server somewhere that can do things, and then it's joined to so many channels and whatever channels you want, and then. So then, like you'd done, you imported a couple of modules, and one of the modules was this web service monitoring system. So you built that. So that's question one, is kind of can you just go through that? And the second part is the security of that. So then anybody who connects to these channels can do all that work you just did. And so then how do you say that, hey, these admins can do this and these admins can do that? And how does that whole security work? So that, hey, if I simply use Slack on my phone to, hey, do this, so long as I can join the channel, or I'm invited to the channel, then I can do all that work too. But then who can, but I need to also set up what exactly the bot itself can do and is doing, right?
So you can of course define a user account, create a user account for the bot, and make sure that the bot is not allowed to do anything beyond what you want it to be able to do. The second part is, can anyone in the channel do exactly what you're doing? So in my current configuration, all I've set up is a bot administrator. So anyone who is a bot administrator can do anything. With the bot. All the commands are available to bot administrators. But you can limit it this as you want. So the commands we have available for that. Let's go back to Slack. It's easier to show it here. So let's go on help. We'll get a list of available commands. And we can see that there's a get role command. So we can see the only role we've defined is bot administrator. So say, for example, you want to have you have a specific channel in which you invited, for example, your help desk staff, and you want your help desk staff to use the bot to reset passwords or to just only unlock user accounts. So one level of security is you could make it a private channel, and you could be the only person that's inviting people into that chat. Second of all, you have the roles you can define on Postbot itself. So you could create a new role that's called help desk. You could write your own function. You could make a permission definition also in Postbot. You could call it unlock AD account and reset AD password. And you could assign those permissions to your new role. Or you could make multiple roles in which you split it up further. Like some people are able to unlock, other people are also able to reset passwords. So
how is that assignment done?
That is using the Postbot commands itself. So you can create a new group, you can create a new permission, you can create a new role, and you can assign it that way.
So the users of Slack are the ones in the permissions, so that's the group. It's an AD. Is it AD integrated? No, or is it?
No, it's Slack groups.
Okay.
So if you want it AD integrated, you can also integrate the security if you're assuming you're writing your own PowerShell functions. You could also do it based on user accounts there. That you, if you have, you could specify which Slack users are able to execute it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So in that same regard, you could have a help desk channel, and they have access to all the read stuff. They can check statuses and stuff like that. But then they can't, reboot servers. They can't, reset services. But then there'd be a different channel for admins they could do all that other stuff. You could, but again, the bot would be watching both, and would also, check status. It's the same function that's across the whole system.
Yeah, and if the commands are, I actually don't know that for sure. If Slack will display, if Slack will even display the commands that a user does not have permissions to. But if you if a user tries to use a command that they're not authorized to use, the bot will give back a command, will give back a status, you're unauthorized to run this command.
Mm-hmm. And then that last part with the I think I saw a configuration file that you did the import of the web server report module. Was that part of the config stuff?
The configuration?
Yeah. How did you? So I go back. How did you import that? Or is it the plugins one? Is that the configuration?
Yep.
Or the plugin.
Let's
so
go. I'll go to the plugin. So get plugin. Just get plugin right. Yep. There we go. So we can see that I have the web server report installed.
But it's ultimately that's nothing more than just a standard PowerShell module.
Exactly, and that's what I wanted to show now. So if I don't want this module to be installed, I can do remove plugin web server report. So now if I would try to execute the same command, so we get back command not found. So this is typically something that only bot administrators should be able to do, and that's also how it is configured by default. Here we go. You can see the plugin has been installed, and there's the following commands available. I can show the function as well. This function or this module is just a demo module, so don't mind the PowerShell code. So what we have here is the function web status. So if the detail switch is given, then it will actually go to the server and query. It does the query using invoke command, and it connects directly to the VM on my host. We get the get service information, we get some information about the C volume, and we get the uptime, and we pipe it to outstring, so we have string output for the bot to work with. Then we don't have to specify for the bot what it should do with it. So the escalate issue, this one is in this case just plain text. In our organization, we actually have a robo dialer that will wake you up in the middle of the night. And when we want to start the service again, we do the same thing. We connect to the VM and we start the service. And here's also an example where I get the AD information, but I didn't include that one in this demo. But you can see that using get the AD user, you can execute this command. And because I'm running, and because I'm specifying the administrative credentials here, the bot has access to this.
So also in this module here, it's designed strictly for, pretty much for chatbots because it's doing all this outstring kind of stuff. If you just output the actual raw thing, it would just come out funky or just look funky.
Oh no, it would also. I think it would also look okay. I can remove outstring for this one and see what kind of output we're getting. I think it should be fine as well. In order to do that, I'll have to remove it again and add it again. So it's no, actually I don't have to. I can restart the chatbot and it reloads the modules as well. So that's one other thing I'm doing here. Right now I'm running the bot in a PowerShell session. If you're running this in production, you probably want to run it as a service and have it monitored as such. And there's a number of tools out there to run your PowerShell scripts as services, or run it as a PowerShell job, so it's not an active console that you might accidentally mess with. So let's give it a second to restart and reload all the modules. right, this should be good. So let's do web status dash detail. You see the output is still acceptable. I'm not even sure if there's a real difference. Oh yeah, the difference is that we don't get the PS computer name and the gun space ID because those are hidden by default.
Yeah, that's cool.
So if you would write this for non-demo purposes, then you probably want, I don't know how familiar you are with Slack, but you want to consider making your output look more like this. This is called attachments in Slack, and you can configure it to use this kind of output. That is a bit friendlier on the eyes.
What's a good resource to find how to do that?
That's
documentation.
Yeah, that's on GitHub, on postbot.io, and the PS Slack repository. There are good resources about getting started with that. Additionally, Slack itself has extensive information about its API. And there you can see how you can structure it on the JSON level as well. And then you can also do things. In the reverse way. So, for example, what I've set up in my environment is that I have. Are you familiar with webhooks?
No.
So in Slack, you also have you can also define a webhook. Let's create one. I'll go to, I think it's in Manage Apps as well. Let's see. I don't know where it is exactly, but what a webhook is a special URL comparable to OneDrive share URL, but instead of visiting the URL, you can post stuff to it. And specifically, if you know that URL, you can post stuff to specific Slack channels. So if you use invoke REST method with post and the URL of the webhook, you can use that for one-way traffic to your Slack team, and you can have servers post their information in the Slack channel. So what I've set this up for on a specific server, if something is triggered in the event log, then it will post it to a Slack channel. So it's a poor man's monitoring solution in some cases for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That actually sounds pretty cool. I'm excited.
What I can do once I'm answering the questions, what I'll do, I will put the links to Postbot.io, PS Slack, and how to set up webhooks and how to create your own JSON payloads. I'll put it all in my final slide in the PowerPoint presentation. And I'll share that with you guys. Okay. So the team interaction, what did we do? Well, we found out that there was a problem with the server because the customer was very angry and called my manager. My manager analyzed it as well as he could. Then he contacted me. I resolved the problem using only Slack because I was smart enough to already write a function on Slack. And I didn't have to RDP in, I didn't have to mess around with my VPN token, and I could go back to sleep within 5 minutes after resolving the issue. Of course, this was a very basic scenario. What I would do in practice for a situation like this, I would probably automate this and not even have it wake me up, but I would just automatically restart the service. Yeah, then we've reached the end of it. The questions. Does anyone still have questions based on this?
Thank you. That was really good.
All right, no problem. I hope I wasn't too sleepy.
It was very good. Be interested to try to get it past our security managers.
Well,
I was just sitting there thinking what they don't know won't hurt them.
Well,
No, if they find out, they'll hurt you.
that is the advantage of Slack. At least you don't have to pay to start using it. So it's a great solution to use as shadow IT until you get it approved. As long as it gets to the firewall, you should be fine.
I think Jacob was asking, can it be ported to Teams? Does it work with Teams?
Postbot does not work with Teams, but it is currently listed as an issue in the GitHub repository.
I think they have their own bot framework, don't they?
They do have their own bot framework. The reason I give this presentation about Postbot and not about the Microsoft bot framework is because it's more focused on developers, and it's a bit harder to get your first bot up and running, and it's also harder to implement functions into it.
Yeah.
At least from a sysadmin point of view. Let's see. See, there's some text messages here. Yeah, so Teams indeed also has webhooks. Exactly. GI, I didn't mention it in the security slide, but GI is indeed a very good option. Then you can run your bot as a non-privileged account and just give it access on specific GI endpoints. No problem at all. I'm happy you liked the presentation.
Yep, this was really neat. I know you had given me several choices for the presentation tonight, and this was the one I'd seen just a little bit of this in a lightning demo last year at the PowerShell Summit. So I was like, yes, this is something I want to see, because we use Slack at work, but we're not using any bots, and this looks like it would be really neat to use.
Yeah, especially if you're already proficient in PowerShell, it's very easy to port your scripts to Pushbot and just start hit the ground running, so to say.
Definitely, and thank you again for presenting tonight. This was really, really interesting.
Yeah, like I said, I hope I didn't I didn't sound too sleepy.
Not at all. And as a matter of fact, I guess the good thing about Skype for Business is it sounds like you're not halfway around the world.
Ah, that's good. That's at least the audio quality is good then. So I also noticed that PS Submariner mentioned that he was using a different bot. Which bot are you using then? Because I've worked with different bots before I started using Poshbot, and the one I was using was Ubot or just Ubot. But there's a number of bot frameworks out there. Yep. Yeah, I also struggled with the coffee. With CoffeeScript when using Ubot, it's a lot harder to get your PowerShell code in there, and that's for me was a great advantage of starting with Poshbot, because you can directly input your functions in your modules and use them right away. Yeah, and for anyone here, if you're getting started with Poshbot, and if you're running into any issues, if it's something blocking, which is actually a bug, you can of course report it on GitHub. And otherwise, also listed my Twitter handle. Just tag me in Twitter, and if I don't follow you and you want to DM me, just make sure I follow you. And I'm always ready to help out.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording at this point, and we normally post the recording like 1 week after the session.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll have to do any editing at all on this one.
Okay.
So
that should make it easy.
Yeah, what I normally do, I just view the video to make sure the quality's good and there's nothing that needs to be edited. I normally it's just chopping the beginning and maybe the end off of the video. And then we post it on our YouTube channel, and I'll post an entry on our website that's got it embedded, but you can view it on our YouTube channel or on the website itself. Okay.
That's excellent. Well, thank you very much for having me tonight. And yeah, I hope to make it in person one time to Mississippi.
Yeah, thank you for presenting and staying up so late to present this for us. And just about I'm just curious to know what time it is where you are.
Currently, it's 4:45.
Wow. And
so I'm on track to still get 3 hours of sleep before I have to get back into the office.
4:45. That's time for me to be getting up and getting ready to go to work.
Yeah, usually I wake up at 6, but I'll give myself some leeway and stay in bed until 8.
Okay, well, I really appreciate it. That was super awesome, and I'm super excited to see what I can come up with now.
Okay. Well, be sure to share if you come up with something cool. It's always interesting to see what other people use it for.
Can't wait to send my security manager next week and scare him to death.
well, don't show him the scary stuff. Maybe show him some reporting stuff you can do with it. That's something we actively use it for a lot. Is we were getting like a couple hundred emails a day from several reports from servers that we would never look at, and we had mail rules, so they always ended up in Outlook folders that none of us ever looked at. So what we've done is those same scripts we were using for that, we just added it to a Slack bot, and whenever we want those reports, we can just generate them on the fly, and they're up to date, and they have the information we need, instead of digging to Outlook folders and getting information that's already 2 hours old, so it doesn't provide us what we need. So that's also a good use case and fairly easy to implement if you already have those reports set up. And because it's Slack, you can also, right now I was dumping plain text, but you can also attach Excel sheets or HTML reports or whatever funky kind of output you're looking for.